The date is February 25th, 1991. The Gulf War is entering its final, brutal phase. Iraqi forces are retreating north from Kuwait along a 6-lane highway. Thousands of vehicles, tanks, armored personnel carriers, supply trucks, all packed bumper to bumper in a desperate escape. They never made it. Out of the darkness, a sound unlike anything they had ever heard. Not a jet engine, a growl, a deep, metallic roar that shook the ground before anything was visible. Then, the road exploded. A-10 Warthogs came in low and fast, their 30mm cannons firing depleted uranium rounds at 3,900 rounds per minute. The sound was so violent, so inhuman, that survivors later described it not as gunfire, but as the sky tearing open. When the sun rose, the highway was a graveyard of burning metal. Over 2,000 vehicles destroyed. And the aircraft responsible? Every single one returned home. This was not the work of a sleek, futuristic superjet. This was the work of a slow, ugly, unkillable beast that the Air Force never wanted to build. This is the story of the A-10 Warthog, the plane they called a mistake, the plane that became a legend, and the plane that simply refuses to die. To understand the Warthog, you have to go back to the nightmare scenario that haunted every NATO general in the 1960s, the Fulda Gap, a narrow corridor of flat land in Germany. This was the kill zone. Intelligence reports confirmed that if the Cold War ever went hot, a wave of over 40,000 Soviet tanks and armored vehicles would pour through this gap and overwhelm Western Europe in a matter of days. NATO had a problem, a very simple, very terrifying problem. They had no way to stop that many tanks from the air. Fighter jets were fast, but they flew too high and too quick to hunt individual tanks hiding under trees. Helicopters could get low and slow, but Soviet anti-aircraft guns would tear them apart before they got close. America needed something that didn't exist. A plane that could fly low enough to find tanks hiding in forests, slow enough to aim and kill them one by one, and tough enough to survive the wall of lead coming up from the ground. The Air Force hated this idea before it even left the drawing board. They wanted fast, beautiful, supersonic fighters. They wanted the F-15. They wanted the F-16. They wanted machines that looked like the future. What they were about to get was the ugliest, angriest, most brutally effective killing machine ever built. And it would be created by a small group of rebels who didn't care what the generals thought. The year is 1967. The Air Force launches the AX program. The requirement is simple on paper. Build a dedicated ground attack aircraft that can loiter over a battlefield, survive heavy fire, and kill Soviet tanks. 2 companies answer the call. Northrop submits the YA-9. Fairchild Republic submits the YA-10. The YA-10 wins. And the reason it wins is because its designers did something radical. Something the Air Force never asked for. They started with the gun. Not just any gun. The General. Electric GAU-8 Avenger. A 7-barrel, hydraulically driven rotary cannon that fires 30mm shells the size of milk bottles. It is the largest, heaviest, and most powerful aircraft cannon ever built. The gun alone weighs over 4,000 pounds. It is longer than a Volkswagen Beetle. The entire aircraft had to be designed around this weapon. The nose gear is offset to the right because the gun occupies the center line of the fuselage. When it fires, it produces 10,000 pounds of recoil force. That recoil is so violent it literally slows the aircraft down in flight. Pilots describe firing it not as pulling a trigger, but as unleashing something alive. And the sound is legendary. It does not go bang. It does not go pop. It makes a low, guttural, growling roar that lasts for about 2 seconds and sends 1-200 rounds downrange. Soldiers on the ground called it the sound of God clearing his throat. But a gun is useless if the plane carrying it gets shot down on the first pass. So the designers built something else. The titanium bathtub. The A-10's cockpit is not just armored. It is encased in a 1,200-pound titanium shell that wraps around the pilot like a cocoon. This bathtub can withstand direct hits from armor-piercing shells up to 23 millimeters. The canopy is bulletproof. The fuel tanks are self-sealing and filled with foam to prevent explosions. The flight control systems are redundant. The landing gear is designed so that if hydraulics fail, the wheels simply drop and lock by gravity. The engines are mounted high on the tail, above the wings, to shield them from ground fire. The exhaust passes over the tail surfaces, cooling it and reducing the heat signature of infrared missiles. This plane was not built to avoid damage, it was built to absorb it and keep fighting. There are photographs of A-10s returning to base with entire sections of wing missing, with one engine destroyed and the other barely running, with hydraulic fluid pouring out of holes the size of dinner plates, and still, the pilots walked away. The Air Force brass looked at this machine and saw a slow, ugly, unglamorous hog. The pilots who flew it looked at it and saw something else entirely. They saw a guardian angel. But even with all this engineering, the Warthog almost died before it ever saw combat. The fighter mafia inside the Air Force tried repeatedly to kill the program. They said it was too slow, too vulnerable, a Cold War relic. They wanted the F-16 to do the job instead. They were wrong, and the desert was about to prove it. When Operation Desert Storm began in January 1991, the A-10 was finally given its moment. And it did not just perform. It dominated. A-10 pilots flew over 8,000 combat missions. They destroyed more than 900 Iraqi tanks, over 2,000 military vehicles, over 1,200 artillery pieces. They hunted Scud missile launchers. They provided close air support for advancing ground troops. They flew in weather so bad that other aircraft couldn't leave the ground. 2 A-10 pilots became the first to shoot down enemy helicopters with the cannon, not missiles, the gun, in the air, against flying targets. The aircraft that the Air Force had tried to kill became the single most requested asset by ground commanders, Marines, Army, Special Forces. They all wanted the Warthog overhead, because when the Warthog showed up, the enemy stopped fighting and started hiding. Soldiers who served in the Gulf War will tell you the same thing. The most beautiful sound in combat was not the roar of a fast jet streaking overhead. It was the low growl of an A-10 coming in for a gun run. It meant someone up there was watching over them. The Warthog went on to serve in Bosnia, Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Iraq again. Every single time the same story. Devastating effectiveness. Pilots walking away from damage that should have killed them. Ground troops demanding more. And every single time the generals in clean offices tried to retire it. They said drones could do the job. They said the F-35 was the future. They said the era of the slow, ugly ground attack plane was over. Congress said no. The troops said no. History said no. The A-10 Warthog is not a beautiful aircraft. It will never star in a Hollywood blockbuster. It will never break a speed record or turn heads at an air show. But in the only metric that matters, the metric of soldiers coming home alive, it is perfect. It is a machine built for the dirtiest, most dangerous job in warfare. It flies low. It takes hits. It protects the men and women on the ground who have nothing but a rifle and a prayer. And for as long as there are soldiers in combat, and for as long as there are generals who try to kill it, the Warthog will be there. Flying low, growling loud, refusing to die. Some machines are legends because of what they can do. The A-10 is a legend because of what it refuses to stop doing. But while the A-10 owned the ground, another machine was about to own the skies. An aircraft with a perfect combat record, 104 enemy fighters shot down, 0 losses, the undisputed king of air superiority. Its story is next. Subscribe now so you don't miss the legend of the F-15 Eagle.